Greetings, folks. What's up? Dude, I was just thinking about somebody. It was very important to my guitar playing journey. I want to tell you guys this story about how I met this person. Like, this guy worked at a guitar shop in Commerce that I used to go to all the time. It no longer exists now. And his name was Dave Pete. And I was like, dude, I was probably 14 when I first met this guy. And I would go down there looking at Les Pauls. And I hadn't found Satch and Vi yet. And dude, like, they had a bunch of studios and some standards, and I told my dad, like, that's the guitar I want. And I see him sitting over there with an Ibanez RG 1570 Prestige sitting next to him. That's left-handed. And I was like talking to him, just, man, I'd like to have one of those Les Pauls. And he was like, yeah, they're great. They're great guitars. And he was telling me about the difference between the standard and the studio. And he asked me one day, he was like, who do you like? Like, what guitar players do you like? And I told him at that time, Kirk Hammett. He was my guitar hero at that time. And he was like, maybe you should look into one of his signature models, like the KH202, that's mildly affordable. Nope. I was dead set on a Les Paul. That's what I wanted. Never could get one. I got a lot of Epiphones from him. He would sell me all my stuff. And then I found Satriani and Vi. I had discovered them at the age of 15. Or, no, 16. 16. Okay. And I go down there. Dude, I want to get an Ibanez. And he's like, okay, what kind of Ibanez? And I was like, I don't know. Something that's like Satriani and Vi play. Oh, you found them. And I was like, yes. And Steve Vai was my favorite at the time. I hadn't delved too deep into Satch's catalog yet. And he was like, well, in our Cornelia store, we have an Ibanez RG 350DX up there it looks like a gem. And that sold me. I was like, dude, done. I'm gonna go get that. And it was like $389 at the time back then. And I saved up some money. Somehow, I forget how I did it, but I managed to get this guitar. And before then, I'd had a Fender Stagemaster that was a Squier that had a Floyd on it, 24 frets. It was right around the time that Jackson bought Fender. Or Fender bought Jackson, sorry. And the bridge was level to the body, but the back of the bridge looked like it was tilted up like this. And when I got the Ibanez, the bridge was flat, level. And I was like, hell yeah, dude. I played on that guitar for a month before I changed the strings. And I was like, I felt like Steve Vai. I could do what Steve does now. I had no idea what him and Joe actually played. And then it comes time to restring it. And I just did what I did on my Fender guitar I had, which was, tune it down, cut all the strings off, string it up with nines that were, let's date this a little bit here. If any of you guys remember these strings, we're getting old. Martin Darko, 9-42, green pack. The 10s were in the red pack. I put those on, tune it up, all the strings, tune them up, and the bridge is like that. I've told this story many times. And I'm like, oh, well, I left it. Just whammy the shit out of it, play the hell out of it, grabbing it like Steve Vai and holding it up. And then one day, those screws for the springs in the back came out of the body. Traded that guitar off because I had no idea about setup or anything until I met Dave. He is what helped me to understand how floating trim works. And then I got the RG320 FM that I talked about in my Ibanez praise video I did. And I did the same thing to it and took it to him 7 times. And I'd never heard this guy play before. And he's like, "What are you doing to this thing? Like, how is it possible that this happens every week and you're bringing this down here?" Because I live up here where I'm at in Georgia, and Commerce was a good, 45-minute drive down there for me. And I took it to him the first time. And I was like, "Dude, I don't know what's going on with it. I just can't get it in tune. The bridge is all jacked up." And I'm like, he's just going to set it up for me. He'll do it. And I'll get to take it home. And it'll be awesome. Right? The first thing this guy does is he gets it on the bench where he works on it at. Picks it up, looks down the neck, tightens the truss rod. Okay, I have to let it sit until tomorrow to let the wood acclimate to the adjustment that I just made to your truss rod. I'll call you when it's done. And he did all the work. He called me and said, "It's ready to go. Just come down here and get it and rush it back home." And I do that whole thing. Screwed it up again. That's when he took me back there in the back of the store and showed me how to do everything to keep the guitar running and playing the way it's supposed to. And I remember the first time I seen him play was right after I got that guitar. And I was kind of a, hot-headed teenager at that time. I didn't know anything. Dude, I thought I was good. And I was talking about Steve Vai with him. Like, I learned For the Love of God the other day, and I played him my version of the song, and dude, it was abysmal. It was an abysmal disaster. And he was like, "Well, check this out, dude. I learned this the other day." And he proceeds to play The Audience is Listening by Steve Vai, note for note. I mean, I would have swore that was Steve Vai right in front of me playing this. And me and him, we built up a friendship, man, over our love of Satch and Vai and Ibanez guitars. And every time I went down there, he had something new to show me that he was learning. And then one day he comes over when I'm over there playing. "Dude, I gotta show you this. Check this out." And he starts playing Satch Boogie. And he's playing through it, and he looks at me, and he was like, "That's awesome, right?" And I was like, "Dude, yeah." And he was like, "You can already play that, can't you?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, but not like this. I can't do it like that." And I would ask him questions like, the opening chord of "Always With You, Always With Me" by Satriani. Like, I didn't know what the chord was. I just learned it from tab. And I asked him one day, "Hey, Dave, dude, what is this chord right here?" And he comes over there and looks at me, and he's like, "Are you out of your mind? Like, why are you asking me this?" First thing you gotta do is you got to find your root note. So what's your root note? And it was the E string 7th fret. It's some sort of a B, which I later learned it's a B add 4. And man, like me and him, we would stay after the store closed. I'd be in there, and he would just sit and play and tell me about, he was in a band in the 80s called Hurricane that got to open for Def Leppard. And he showed me like old pictures of him back in the 80s when he was in the studio recording with that Ibanez. He had that Ibanez for that long. And, I was like, "Dude, I would love to have one like yours." And this is when I found out. He was like, "Well, these are killer money." Like back then, they were. Back then, I think the 1570 was something like $700 back then. And I thought my Ibanez's were like the shit, you know. And he told me, he was like, Steve Vai and Satriani, they're playing the Ibanez Japanese prestige guitars. Well, it can't be that much different than what I have because I was still that, hot-headed teenager, man. And he was like, dude, like the build quality, I'll go ahead and tell you, the Japanese build quality is miles above what we have here in this store. On all the Ibanez's you've been getting from us. Like, you need to invest in that one day. And I was like, well, maybe someday I'll have one. And I hope so, and I hope I can show you when I get it, And then one day he was playing one Steve Vai track that starts with a K. I can't say the name of it, but it's off of his Real Illusions Reflections album. And I think it's track 4. And he's running this arpeggio sequence, sitting there at his workplace there. Just running this, dude. And I'm like, how many times are you going to do that? And he was like, I don't care if I have to do it 500 times. If that's what it takes, that's what I'm going to do. And I was like, well, what's the point if you can't get it in a couple of tries, And he looks at me and he goes, look, dude, you learn a lick, you start working at it, and it's not coming out. It's not sounding good. It sounds like shit. You sit down with that and you run that 500 times, no breaks. Because the mother of all skill is repetition. That's the first time I'd ever heard that. And I asked him, well, can you play any John Petrucci? And he laughed. He laughed at me. Like, really, dude? And I was like, well, I mean, you can play Steve Vai. You can play Satriani. Petrucci can't be that much different. He's just really fast. And he was like, no, John is so much more than really fast. He said John takes a lot of control in the picking hand. His right hand is insane. Like, if you have a weak right hand, you may as well just not even try. Like, you would have to sit and do alternate picking exercises for hours, months, years to even get close to JP. And he was also really into Paul Gilbert. And he would show me, like, technical difficulties. He could play the song, but he could never get to play it like Paul. And he was like, I've tried all sorts of different things that I've read about Paul as far as how he holds the pick. And I just can't do it. I even went down to the medium, Dunlap picks. And held it at the 45-degree angle that he teaches in his Shred Alert DVD. And I just can't do it. And he was like, Paul's a machine. It's like he's programmed to play all this. And I didn't know who Paul was. And I was like, well, who's that? And he was like, dude, go listen to Racer X. And he was also with Mr. Big. Check them out too, And I started listening to Paul. Like, really listening. And I'm just, like, blown away. I cannot play like Paul. And me and him, we kind of had that whole thing. Like, he could play like Steve Vai. He loves Steve Vai. He'd kind of play like Satriani, but he would get me to play the sad stuff. Like, dude, show me that part in the Mystical Potato Head Groove thing or whatever, like the chorus thing or something. And then I'd be like, dude, you need to learn Petrucci. And he was like, well, if I do that, you need to learn Paul Gilbert for me. And we would go back and forth showing each other things that we had learned or we're trying to get under our hands. And he was just such an eye-opening experience for me on the guitar. Like, he was the first guy to crush my ego. And I thank him to this day for doing that. Because he told me, he was like, dude, you're good. You're a good guitar player. Like, you get your confidence up to a respectable level, you'll be ready for the stage, But he was like, your attitude sometimes, the way you come in here, spouting off about what you can play and how good you are, if you do that when you get into a band, nobody's going to want to work with you. Like, your attitude will lose you more gigs, more recording opportunities, more band opportunities than anything, as far as the style of music you play, who your favorite guitarists are, what your influences are, Like, your attitude, that's everybody's first impression of you. So just lose that attitude, because if you don't, you're just gonna be reduced to, not even getting known for the talent that you have. And then that store closed, and the one in my area right up here, 15 minutes from me here, it closed. I remember I went in there in Cornelia. That's what the area is called. I live in Habersham, Georgia. It's a really small town. If you blink, you miss it. But I went in there to get strings one day. Ernie Ball 10s. And I'm buying my strings, looking at a couple guitars. I go in there and just hang out and play. And the guy at that time, his name was Ray, that worked in there. And he said, well, this is our last day, man. Like, this is it. It was called Crazy Al's Music. And he was like, we're Crazy Al. That's what they called the guy. His name was Al. They called him Crazy Al because he was just out there, dude. That dude was wild. Al's decided he's going to close this one because we just don't get, we don't sell a lot of stuff. I bought a lot of stuff from them over the years. And then I would just go to Commerce all the time. And then they say, I go down there to buy an Ibanez RG321 that was a natural mahogany, fixed bridge. Got tired of the bar stuff. I didn't want to do that no more for a while. And I bought that guitar. That's the last guitar I bought from that store. And Dave, the guy that I met there, he sold me that guitar. And the amp that my nephew uses in his room in there, it's a 2009 PV Viper 112, 75 watt. I went in there for a new amp. And he was like, dude, I know you like Satch, And he was like, check this out. This is a PV modeling amp. It's got all these different amps on it you can just set your knob to. And the JSX was on there. That sold me immediately. I got that amp for $399. And it still works to this day. I've had that amp for almost 20 years. And then they decide they're closing that store. And I never seen Dave ever again for a long time. But I'd always think about him, and I'm like, dude, I just wonder about what he's learned. Like, what has he been learning that I haven't seen yet? I wish I could see him play and I could show him what I've been working on, And then I go down to a store down there in Commerce, a boot store, because I needed some more boots for work, because they require that we wear steel toes. And I go down there, and guess who's in there buying a new wallet? It was Dave. And as soon as I walked up to him, he was like, dude, I haven't seen you in so long, man. Like, how you been, man? And we catch up a little bit, and he asked me, you still playing? And I was like, oh yeah, dude, every day. Still playing. He was like, well, what kind of guitars you got? And I told him, I got the 3 Japanese Ibanez's. And he was like, you finally did it. And I was like, yeah, I finally got them. And he was like, what else you got? And I was like, I have a Satriani. That's a premium now. And he was like, that guitar's perfect for you. And then I told him, I had the JP15 at the time, the blue one. I was like, I also have a Music Man JP15. And he was like, dude, like that's killer money, man. Like, what kind of job you got? And I was like, well, I bought it used. And he goes, well, that Music Man might ruin every other guitar company for you. And I was like, nah, man, because of you, I could never not have an Ibanez. And he looks at me and he was like, you been learning Petrucci? And I was like, yeah, a little bit here and there, but it's really hard. And he was like, you're good, man. You've always been a good guitarist. Like, you can do it. Just keep the faith that you can do it. And I asked him, well, what are you working on these days? And he looks at me and he goes, man, I can't even play anymore. Like, after the Crazy Owls music store, I went into construction, outdoor construction, and I got really bad arthritis in my hands. And he showed me, like, I can't even make a C chord anymore. His fingers just bend like this and they lock like that. I was like, well, have you heard the new Steve Vai record that came out in 2022? And he was like, I don't even listen to Vai and Satch and Gilbert Petrucci anymore. I don't listen to music anymore like that, like guitar music, because I can't play. And dude, I hate it so much for him because he was an unbelievable guitarist. He was probably the best that I've ever seen in person. That's not like Satch or Vai or anybody like that. Just a guy that I met that had taught me so much about guitar. But he was like, I don't listen to it no more, man, because I can't play anymore. But he told me, he was like, you always play, dude. No matter what, you play. Because one day, you might not think it'll ever happen, but one day you could lose it. And he told me, he was like, that's the most crushing feeling you could ever have, especially if you have the passion for music like guitar. Like, you love guitar, it's fun, it's great, it's awesome. You don't realize how much you love it until you can't do it no more. And he was like, I was like, do you still have that 1570 that you had? And he was like, yeah, I've still got it. I can't play, but I still have it. And he told me, I wish you were left-handed. Because if you were, I would just give you my address and you can come and get it. And you could play it. But man, he was just like, dude, he was a huge eye-opener for me. And I remember one time I went down there when that 320 that I had, the lock had stripped out, right? I was going to order buy a new nut for it. And they carried replacement parts for a Floyd Rose. But I didn't know that Ibanez has a whole different system from the Floyd. You know, there's just the Edge. And that guitar had a Edge Pro 2 on it. I think it's an Edge Pro 2. And I get this nut, and he's like, that's not going to work. And I was like, what do you mean? He was like, this isn't a Floyd Rose, dude. This is similar to a Floyd Rose, but it's not a Floyd Rose. And he was like, look at this. Look at mine. And he shows me the Ibanez that he had. His are all three stripped out. They don't even catch anymore. And I was like, really? And he was like, yeah, man, I've had the replacement part on order for like 2 years. But I've never got it. And I was like, well, I don't want to do that because, I can't keep it in tune. And he was like, yeah, you can. Just don't use the bar. And I was like, but I like using the bar. And he was like, dude, if you have a great guitar, just play the thing. If you can't use the bar, don't use the bar. And since that time of being all about the Ibanez and all about Satch and Vai, I have slacked off of the crazy whammy stuff. I don't do it nowhere near as much as I used to. The JP15 here, it has a floating trim. But you can dive it. It will go out of tune. You can pull it up and it'll go out of tune. But if you subtly use the bar, rarely ever will it drop. And that's what that guitar has taught me. That's what my last one taught me. But yeah, when I seen him, man, that last time, it broke my heart. It still breaks my heart that he can't play. Because, like, dude, like I said, he was the best guitarist I'd ever seen at that time. And I've since seen Satch and Vai, live. And watching that, dude, I was like, wow, I suck. Like, Even after 25 years of playing, I suck. But he always, like, even though he did sort of bring down my ego, and I thank him for that every day, he really did, like, always made sure that I knew that I was good enough. And he would help me to stay motivated when I was learning that Satriani stuff and trying to get that Steve Vai stuff under my hands. But he basically told me, like, hey, dude, if you're going to learn Vai, and this still holds true today, if you're going to learn Steve Vai, you've got to have a gym. Or you've got to have a PIA. Which the PIA didn't exist at this time. But he was like, you have to go buy a gym. You can't play Steve Vai's music unless you have a gym. And I was like, what do you mean? You know, it's just a floating trim. And he was like, his guitar is built specifically for him. The string spacing is different for his massive fingers. And his bridge cavity is routed out really deep so you can pull that bar up and go way up. Like, it goes way higher than standard floating trims. And his music, you know, he utilizes everything on his guitar. And he was like, you know, have you ever tried to learn Whispering a Prayer? And I was like, yeah, but I can't get the feedback the way he gets feedback for those notes. And he was like, yeah, because he's using a Fernandez sustainer pickup. And you have to have that to be able to play that song. But that was the last time I seen him, was in the boot store. And he told me he couldn't play anymore. And I haven't seen him since. And I hope that someday I see him in there again, buying a new wallet or something. Because that was my eye-opening, life-changing sort of aha moment. Was all because of him. I wouldn't be the guitarist I am today without my dad teaching me my chords and classic rock songs, without my neighbor up the street that used to live up there teaching me to read tabs, and him giving me that crushing, you're not as good as you think you are. And the setup tips that he taught me about the Ibanez stuff. And all that translates to other floating trims. Like the JP15, when I restring this guitar, I do the strings one at a time. Take the old string off, put the new one on, tune it up to pitch. And follow suit, and it basically stays where it's supposed to. So, that's what I wanted to talk about tonight. I was just thinking about him, you know, because there's only like one or two people usually that you're gonna meet in your guitar journey that's really gonna open your eyes and change how you see the guitar. And they are not afraid to tell you what you don't want to hear. And he was one of those for me. So, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed, and we'll catch you in the next one.